Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, wherever you are in the world today. My name is Herb and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to our Big Book Step Guide meeting. Please join me in prayer. God, please set aside everything that I think I know
about myself,
my unmanageability, the 12 steps, and you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Well, as you know, this is a monthly gathering of people who are interested in the whole subject of being a step guide and sponsor. The real focus is about step guide. It's not an official term at all. It's a term that came to being because of different people's experience having to go outside of sponsorship in order to be able to engage somebody to do the steps out of the big book. And in my own personal experience, many of you know that I had several experiences over a 20-year period with a step guide, like a project manager. I engaged a step guide, basically a mechanic with the big book and the step process, not in the sense of any just a formulaic approach. No. A mechanic meaning that they understood, they had knowledge of the big book and its interpretations, some various interpretations, as well as different experiences of going through the steps. But it began and it ended. Whether it was 6 months, a year, or 2 years, they were projects of going through the steps with the project manager. And I personally did not connect as friends or an ongoing relationship, nor did none of them ever became or were my sponsor. And so this gathering has developed over time of people who also have that experience of helping people navigate the steps out of the big book, or who want to or think they want to. So it's kind of a train the trainer opportunity to get some knowledge and some experience, hands-on, practical, with regard to helping people.
I began doing Herb's workshop on the telephone, and I think it was 2012, where I met Jeanette and a few other people on the phone call that became good friends. And going through that workshop with the big book, directed by Herb, was a life-changing event for me. I had done AWOLs for years in FA and had my eyes open to a certain extent, but going in depth with the big book was life-changing in several ways for me. After I finished that workshop, I was enthused about being a step guide, although I felt that I didn't have anything to offer, but I wanted to try doing that. And being the introvert that I am, I was very comfortable just talking one-to-one with somebody. So I agreed to be a step guide, and I had 2 or 3 step buddies each year. I did not go on the workshop again with her because it was a phone workshop and it didn't even occur to me to try and do that. But I talked each week with my step buddies one-to-one. I would set up a day and a time for them to call, and often it would be about a 15-minute call, but when it came to the fourth step, it would be quite a bit longer. I encouraged them to call in between times if they needed help or encouragement or had a question. And I had a really good experience working with people as a step guide. It reinforced my own learnings that I had from when I went through the workshop. It helped me reinforce the insights and to remember things that I had gone through in that first workshop. And of course, I felt like I was of some use. And that is the thing. The older I get, the more I realize this. The thing that makes me feel the most happy these days is when I can be of some help. Being a step guide, working one-to-one with people, gave me that feeling of being of help. For the most part, I had very good luck, people that didn't drop out. I think a couple of people over the years dropped out, just stopped calling, but most people kept calling. And it was very comfortable for me to keep a finger in the pie of the Big Book workshops by doing one-to-one step guiding. And then last year, I got a phone call from someone that I had known in FA not very well. She was doing the Monday, Tuesday workshop with Herb, and she said, Beth, would you be my step guide? And I said, sure. And she said, and I know 2 other people in our Monday, Tuesday workshop that would also like you to be their step guide. Can we do a group? And my first reaction was, no, I don't know anything about doing a group. I can't run a group. But I said yes, because I have learned, at least some of the time, to set aside my fears and say yes. So I said yes. And then another woman called me, had heard that I was going to be doing this, and asked if she could please be in the group too. And so that meant there were going to be 4 people in the group. So I said yes. And I thought about a day and a time that we could meet. I thought about, well, how long do I want this group to run? I decided 1 hour would be a good amount of time, and 4 people would be like the maximum amount that I felt I could deal with. And so we started, and we started the group with a set aside prayer, and we ended it with the serenity prayer. And we met every week, 8:30 to 9:30 on Sundays. And I did not have an agenda. I felt, well, I'm just here to encourage, to support, to clarify. I had my old notes and my old worksheets from when I went through the workshop, and from different weekend workshops I'd done with her, to refer to. But, and at first I thought, well, there are 4 people and we have 1 hour, so I should make it 15 minutes each person, and I should time them and all. As it turned out, that became more fluid, because there were weeks when one person was perhaps working on a column 3 and on resentments, and was needing a lot of time to explore it and to get help with understanding it. And I realized that it didn't always have to be 15, 15, 15, 15, that it was okay if somebody took up more time one week, and it somehow over the weeks it evened out. What happened was a feeling of trust developed, a feeling of safety developed amongst the people in the group. And I think it was that I encouraged us to be supportive of each other, to be non-judgmental, I encourage people to not feel pressured. You know, you work at your own pace. There's no requirements here. I shared my own experiences, and my experience was that if I kept up with Herb's timeline, I felt much better than if I lagged behind. And I think most people in the group that I did keep up with the assignments and the worksheets and the work. One person took a long time with step 4. But we went on anyway, and she went on with us. So the atmosphere of no pressure, no judgment, encouragement, and support was just a beautiful thing. And I felt happy at the end of it. I felt, wow, this has become one of the highlights of my week. This little 1 hour get together became one of the real highlights of my week during the pandemic. And I think the people in the group felt the same way too. So this trust developed. I encouraged people to call me one-to-one aside from the group if they had something else they wanted to work on that they hadn't been able to finish in the group. Or if it was a topic that was sensitive that they didn't want to talk in the group. And that did happen a few times. A lot of the calls that I got outside of the group were around step 4 issues and step 9 issues with the amends. And my feeling is that that's where people need the most help, is dealing with step 4 and dealing with step 8 and 9. And so on we went. And as the weeks developed, people got to know each other better. There was just a very positive atmosphere in the group. It was a surprise and a delight to me how well it went. And when Herb finished the workshop and we finished the group, people didn't want to stop. They were enjoying it so much, and they didn't want to stop. And so I suggested that perhaps we'd like to go through a book together. I had just purchased Alan Berger's new book, 12 Essential Insights to Emotional Sobriety. And I said, what about if we did a chapter a week and just went through that book together? And they decided that, yeah, they'd love to do that. So we took a month off, and then we reconvened same time for an hour. And originally I thought, well, we'll just do a chapter a week. And that lasted for 1 week. And then it seemed that chapter 2 was so dense and so meaty that we needed more than 1 week. And so I let go of the idea of doing a chapter a week, and we are just going through this as we go through it. And it's also a very satisfying experience. So what I got from starting out being very fearful of doing a group, knowing that I was more comfortable working with people one-to-one, I came to this place of thoroughly and deeply enjoying working with a group. And I found it was easy to facilitate a group like that when we're all recovering together in this together. I didn't have to feel like I was above someone else. I just had a bit more experience than someone else, and I could share my own experience, strength, and hope. So it worked out really well. And I'm grateful that I said yes. I'm grateful for the whole concept that developed of group work, because I think we can be of more help then. So at this point, my feeling is that group help is actually a bit more of a treasure to people than one-to-one help with a step guide, because they not only got the step guide experience, strength and hope, encouragement, clarification, but they got it from other people as well. And I found that often other people had extremely valuable insights, things I hadn't thought of, experiences I hadn't had. And so it became a richer, deeper, more well-rounded experience for the person going through it. And so it's been a very positive experience. And with that, I think I'll wrap up. Thanks.
And thank you so much for sharing your experience with us and having the experience. My prayer, certainly, with each person who comes into the workshop or does this work even without being in the workshop, is that they will have an experience of spiritual awakening, meaning a radical change in themselves, and that they will express their gratitude for that in carrying that message to another individual, and go on like that. In terms of the workshop, my it's developed over time that I really want to encourage people to work with an individual, and then it became a small group. And that would be, from my standpoint, the ideal, that the small group get replicated just dynamically based on people's experience and their inclination, and be creative about it, as Beth indicated, going outside the step work to personal development in the sense of spiritual. I don't mean self-help, but I do mean in the sense of the spiritual dimensions. The concept that Beth communicated was one of partnership, not one of one up, one down, teacher and pupil, disciple and guru. No. That's it. She really made that emphasis of a partnership where we're sharing our experience and actually sharing the fact that we don't know it all. And the benefit that has come from doing the workshops for me is I learn from your experience, from your questions, from your challenges, from your struggles, and it expands my own ability to help other people, but also to be helped myself. Yeah, there are some resources. In terms of sponsor, the best resource, quite frankly, it's outside of the fellowship. It comes out of the commercial publication from Hazleton. It's 12-Step Sponsorship. That's what it's called, the book by Hamilton B. It's about sponsorship. I do believe that authentic sponsorship and the original concept behind sponsorship was for somebody to take somebody else through the steps, sharing their experience of navigating the big book. I do believe that's the best sort of model, a sponsor who is in fact a step guide. It happens not to be my experience, and that's why we've used that term now, step guide. But that book, Hazleton's book, 12-Step Sponsorship, is a treasure, to use other people's words. I have done a workshop on sponsorship, which probably has included ideas about step guide, and it's on my YouTube channel. So it's a 3-hour, I think, maybe 4-hour presentation, teaching, as well as participation. And that would be helpful, I believe. The Way of Life document on my website is the way of what I call the Way of Life document. It's a 68-page document that supports the work I do in the weekly 12-step calls. And in the step 12 section, there are notes about chapter 7 and the blueprint for working with another person from my standpoint, as well as a profile that came out of workshops with attendees on sponsorship who gave feedback as to what would be their experience of a desired characteristic of a sponsor. Now, there's what I call a profile, which clearly is just a totally, otherworldly fantasy about what the perfect sponsor would be, but it's not really about that. It's about, these are the characteristics that people found very helpful in their own personal experience of being sponsored. This particular gathering, it's not really a workshop, it's just a gathering of people interested in being a step guide and having the conversations about it, is recorded, is edited, and is put on an audio podcast on YouTube. So monthly, all of these are edited and put on the YouTube. So if you want to use them as a resource, they're there for your benefit.
Some questions from step guides, and the one that keeps cropping up is the one that's the work that's happening in the workshops at the moment, people's first attempt at filling in column 3. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of questions about self-esteem, and some of the step guides have struggled to help the participants with the difference between psychological self-esteem and the belief system self-esteem. Often I've suggested doing pride first if you're struggling, and out of that will come self-esteem. But how would you help the step guides help their participant in this quandary of the two types of self-esteem?
Well, thank you, Jeanette. It's the heart of the matter also. In step 4, the big book presents resentment as the #1 problem. And on page 65, it has 3 columns with regard to the resentment commentary in the big book. The first 2 columns are very straightforward. Who am I resentful at? And why am I resentful? Those are very straightforward, hardly needing any explanation. In the big book, what we call column 3, because it's the 3rd column in the matrix on page 65, there's just a list of words that come out of the 2 paragraphs, one paragraph, the last paragraph on page 64, and the first paragraph on page 65. It is just a list of the 7 words that are in those paragraphs. No definitions, no instructions on the application of, so the words are there, but what do you do with them? I'm not going through a teaching on 3rd column, 4th column. That's not the point here. I want to address rather than maybe not answer, but address the question that Jeanette just posed. And that is, self-esteem is the first word. My interpretation, it's not in the big book. My interpretation is that that is not psychological self-esteem, high self-esteem, low self-esteem. It's not that. This is not in the big book, but it's my knowledge of and experience with doing this work productively for myself and with other people, that self-esteem is about my belief, not my knowledge, not my opinion, not my thoughts, not my feelings, but my belief about who I am. I can't see the lenses through which I'm looking because I'm looking through the lenses. The way I approach, because I was given the experience from other people, the way I approach the 3rd column is I am actually looking at the lenses through which I'm looking. My lenses here are clear, but they're bifocal because, in fact, clear lenses wouldn't help compensate for the adjustment I need in my eyes. But I have to know what the lenses are, and they have to be ground specifically for my deficiency so that I can see clearly. So self-esteem is really, it's the critical piece. And Jeanette indicated a wonderful both litmus test as well as a technique to get clear on the self-esteem. And that was the pride. Well, in the 12 and 12, Bill lists the 7 capital sins. The chief one is pride. This has nothing to do with that. You won't find the definition of self-esteem and pride that I use in the dictionary. You won't find them in the big book. But these are my definitions given to me by other people and really hammered out on the anvil of experience through the group process. That pride is how I want other people to see me. And so the technique that was introduced to me was put myself on a stage. Bill loves the theater, the drama metaphor. Put myself on a stage with another person. How do I want this person to see me? What is it I believe about myself that I want them to see me? That's self-esteem. In terms of pride, how do I want the people in the audience to see that person with whom I have the resentment treating and seeing me? Sounds a little complicated. It's not. How do I want the audience perhaps my coworkers, to see one of my coworkers treating me. And when I look at that, then going to Jeanette's observation, it should be, and it will be if it's healthy, a complementary, meaning similar to what I saw in self-esteem. So if I can't see the self-esteem because I can't look at the lenses through which I'm looking, then I can look at the lenses through other people. So to go to the pride first, how would I like other people to see this person treating me? Well, with respect, with a certain amount of awe, with a certain amount of reverence. You've heard me step outside the box of socialized and civilized reality. All right, just blow it up and be crazy, be outrageous in terms of your stretch. And then I begin to see how I actually believe about myself. Now, I recommend that you start with self-esteem and then go to pride to confirm and to clarify. But if you can't get to the self-esteem because you're so tied up around the axle of your own ego, then indirectly go to the pride and look through the eyes of the audience at the person. All right. Now, if you've done the work, this is very familiar territory. If you haven't done this work, it may be somewhat challenging for you to kind of grasp what I'm talking about. So I'm going to stop now, pause, and go back to Jeanette. And has that addressed it in a way that you were hoping to? And would you like to make some additional comments to that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you were saying if you haven't done the work before, and some of the participants obviously haven't done the work before. And in listening to the recordings, I would also be asking the step guide, have they asked their participant if they're listening to the recordings? Because with you not going through it like you used to do years ago, everyone would get it from you. There's a chance of just using the step guide, and then the work is missing something in the middle. So the participant is just coming to the self-esteem without knowing anything. So I would strongly recommend that step guides check if they're being asked any questions like this and say, have you listened to the recordings?
Yes, and that reminds me to remind you all, or at least even announce it for the first time, that I have a book that was published in 2010 called 12 Steps to Spiritual Awakening. It's my second book, and it has 12 chapters, one chapter for each step. In step 4, I verbally go through, and there's worksheets in that to help support the words. What I just said just now, differently, I'm sure, 12 years ago, but I'm confident it will help because I've got lots of feedback that that book does help people go through the steps. In addition, because this is such an important concept, column 3 and column 4, I mean critical. It's where I had my first spiritual awakening. I've made a decision to and have implemented a workshop on a quarterly basis this year. I've done one already this quarter, and then each quarter, calendar quarter, I will be doing a 3 to 4 hour workshop on columns 3 and column 4, where we actually do the work one-on-one in the forum of the Zoom workshop. So if you're interested in that, pay attention to the emails as they come out. You get a lot of emails about me and from me because I'm very busy with a lot of the work. Delete the ones that have no interest, but pay attention to, if you're interested in column 3, column 4, I will be doing quarterly work in that area. And those are recorded. So the one done this first quarter was recorded and edited. I'm not sure it's been posted yet. I don't track that, but they're normally posted within 2 to 4 weeks of the event itself. So if you want to more experience with, more teaching on, more people's sharing of experience with the column 3, column 4, especially the self-esteem and pride, it's tricky until you break the code. That's my terminology. Once you break the code and you see it, it's kind of like, oh. And my experience is, and I don't think I'm being outrageous in claiming this because it's my experience, not only do you see the truth that you've sort of been kind of aware of, it penetrates the unconscious. It surfaces material that I actually had no clue about. The beliefs that I have that were the distortions, doesn't matter where they came from. They are the distortions of the lenses. So I was not able to see reality as long as I'm looking through the distortions of these beliefs. I believe what I believe, and I see the world as I believe. And the world isn't that way. It's a lie. So therefore, my impact and my interface with the world is very ineffective and unproductive, counterproductive, and I suffer, and so do other people. Jeanette, any comments on that?
Yeah, I'm afraid we're stirring up a lot of people here, Herb. I just want
That's a good thing.
I just want to say that to everybody, the Herb doesn't read the chat. I'm reading it and Rainy's controlling it, but it's thrown something up that I think is really important you clarify, Herb. The question is that somebody's found that using the 4th column worksheet helps them with the self-esteem on the 3rd column worksheet. And I think we should clear up about not using the 4th column yet to help anything you're doing in the 3rd column. Did that make sense, or do you want the whole question?
Well, I intuit what's happening here, and if I heard it correctly, and that is, once you finish with the 4th column work, by the way, in the big book, there's no 4th column. Let's get really clear. Look at page 65. There's only 3 columns. So we're using words to communicate. The final paragraph on page 67 concerning resentments. And there's 5 questions there, all about self-centeredness. 5 questions. The man who took me through the steps called that work the 4th column. It's a convenience for communication. I'm clearing it up because if you're in a meeting and you talk about the 4th column, somebody's going to tell you there's no 4th column, and you go, yeah, we understand that, but it's a way of communicating. But I think what I heard in Jeanette's observation from the chat is that people get some clarity of the self-esteem from the 4th column. And I can see that once you finish the 4th column, see, the 3rd column is half of the exercise. The 4th column is the other half. That makes the whole picture very clear. Whereas my summary of the 3rd column is it's a lie. My beliefs were generally a lie. And the 4th column is the truth, a truth that I never suspected. So when you have the combination, then you can see the self-esteem more clearly. I think Jeanette's point was, though, that that's not what we're going to do as we're doing the 3rd column. Keep your eyes off of the 4th column. Do the 3rd column. And in fact, my experience with doing the work is I did the 3rd column, all of the 3rd column work. If I had 5 resentments or 85 resentments, I did all of the 3rd column work before I ever went to the 4th column. Then I went to the 4th column to then match it up. In the workshop, because we're working with a group and we go a little bit faster than I would with an individual, we get a real good deep experience with the 3rd column. And then, maybe prematurely by somebody's standards, we go to the 4th column so people get a sense of where they're going. They have an experience of bringing it to conclusion. At the same time, then they're going to finish their third column, but they also have some experience with doing the fourth column, which I believe has helped people because they know where they're going. I do not recommend, although some people do it and they have great success with it. No rules here, no rules, just my experience. Some people do the third column and then the fourth column, the third column and then the fourth column. I found it confusing. I found it distracted me from a full exposure and experience with the third column if I tried to, because it's a totally different perspective. It's a 180-degree look. And for me anyway, that did not work. But for some other people, it works. So once again, I'm very practical. What helps you? Jeanette?
This is the actual question is, what is the relationship between that question, the perceived role in column 4,
Oh, yes.
coordinate with self-esteem question in column 3? I think we would still say don't go to perceived role to get the self-esteem.
Correct.
But the question is, what is the relationship between perceived role and self-esteem?
Yeah, and you need to be familiar with the worksheets to understand even the question, and I'm not going there. Figure it out yourself. But the answer to that question is the perceived role is you're coming out of the third column. You haven't looked at any part of the fourth column. And you're just summarizing a lens through which you're looking through the third column so that you can now challenge that lens with all of the fourth column items and questions. And so the perceived role is, this is coming out of that third column where I'm a victim. My perceived role is a variation on victim. Abandoned child, mistreated spouse, disrespected employee. I mean, very short, succinct terms. If I were an author of the play, I'm on a stage, the drama. If I'm the author or the script writer, I'm trying to capture for the script a very succinct word or two that describes, well, this person is going to be the homeless drunk. Therefore, they're going to have tattered clothes. They're going to have language this way. They're going to be thinking this way. They're going to have actions this way. So we try to capture the perceived role coming out of the third column to help us then answer all the questions in the fourth column to challenge and blow up, really, this lie that we've believed that we're a victim. We may have been victimized. Truly, truly, truly victimized. But in doing this work at this particular time, we're not a victim. We just have the lenses of victimhood because we're looking at our history as naming our present moment. And that's a lie. That's a lie. All right. Does that help, Jeanette?
Yeah. So does that mean that what you're saying is there is a strong relationship between perceived role and self-esteem? It's just put in a different way.
It's the implication of the self-esteem. That is correct. There's an absolute correlation. Yes.
Yeah, I
and
think
in fact, that's a wonderful way of cross-checking it, of confirming it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Herb. Thank you. This is a great discussion, and this issue is one that comes up so much with sponsees about feeling they're not worthy, they're unlovable, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no, that's psychological self-esteem.
Okay. But to go from victim, and in some cases, column 4 is almost like perpetrator, how much you have caused as a result of your behavior.
Yeah.
But to go from that victimization, which is so deeply embedded, to wait a minute, maybe I have a problem here, and to stop beating yourself up. How do you work that bridge?
Yeah. With a
Get-
lot of patience. With
What
a
is the-
lot of patience, because as you said, embedded, great word. That's right. I was a victim. It's true. It was criminal even. I was victimized. I had trauma, life-changing, life-altering, permanent disfigurement. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. But here's the breakthrough. Now, it might take more than one conversation, but yes, it's true. You were a victim at age 10, age 20, age 30. Yes, indeed, you were legitimately, objectively a victim. But here you are at age 40, 50, 60. You're not a victim today. You were a victim. It's ancient history. If it's beyond 24 hours ago, it's ancient history. So what's the issue here? Your reaction, not the action of circumstances, events, and people. It was true. It was true historically. It is not true today. It's not happening today. But your reaction to the history is happening, and you're responsible for the reaction. That's a hard message for some people, and people need. I had to go visit this man who was taking me through this work this way 3 different times, 2-hour sessions each time before it finally, oh, it's my reaction is the problem.
Yes, and sometimes I ask them, what do you get from holding on to that reaction?
That's one of the questions in the worksheet is the benefit or the value to you. Yeah.
Right. They're so invested in keeping the reaction. So that's why you were saying it takes patience.
And it takes creativity on your part when you're asking these questions, because there's no right or wrong answer. There's just a helpful answer. There's a healthy answer. And you have to be creative about asking the same question 6 different ways, because they can't hear it.
Right.
Embedded. They're embedded. They cannot hear. They cannot see until they're given the gift of their ears open and their eyes opening. Well, it's desperation, certainly, but part of it's going to be that. Wow. We've got some open mic someplace. Part of it is that set aside attitude and set aside prayer. That's really crucial here.
Thank you.
No, thank you. A wonderful question. This is such a rich discussion. I'm so glad we're having it. Thank you. Lynn.
I've asked you this question before about sponsoring a male person. And I talked to my sponsor about it, and I'm okay with it. But this is what's happening. I've strongly suggested that he consider a male sponsor, and I've given him a couple of names. He did contact them, but somehow he's talking himself out of getting a male sponsor or whatever. He's saying that it doesn't, it's not going to work for me. So can we just continue doing what we're doing?
Yeah.
And so I asked him, what is it that you're looking for from me?
Good.
And he says, well, can we just continue doing the daily reader and giving my reflection and doing a gratitude list? I can do that. And so I'm saying, well, I'm okay doing that, but do I need to ask him more to do more, or just leave it alone the way it is?
What do you want to do? What do you want to do?
What I hear from his reflection is there's a lot of what we've been talking about, the self-esteem, and he has been consistent on your workshop. Not that I'm checking up on him, but he has been consistent.
Well, no, but you're not answering my question.
Okay.
I said, what do you want to do?
I'm okay with him just giving me whatever, if that's all he wants to do, Okay, that's all he wants to do. And then I've asked him, I said, do you want me to comment on what you're saying about the reading?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't answer. I said, do you want me to give you something else to do? and he doesn't answer. So
Sounds like that you have a pretty easy task here.
okay, so just continue reading what he's sending me every day and leave it alone.
You're being helpful. You're doing what he asks you to do. You're asking some questions. He's not responding. You're not responsible to fill in the answers.
Okay.
No. And there's no rules here. It's a suggestion from general service that men work with men and women work with women, but there's no rules here. And it sounds very helpful. And you don't seem to have an issue with it.
No.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just let him do what he's been doing until he whatever changes.
The word that I adopted some while back, I dropped the word service in relationship to step 12. I adopted the word help. When I look through the lens of help, it's very simple and very clear. Am I helping or am I not? What's my motive and what's the outcome? Sounds very clean and very clear, and you're helping. And you're willing to.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. If it changes, then you get a chance to make another decision.
Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's right at the heart of the matter here. So I'm so glad that you brought it up. Thank you.
So now I have one thank you and two questions. My thank you is thank you so much, whoever asked that last question. And Herb, your answer. Yeah, and about being helpful or serving. So very helpful. So my one question is the prayer for free from resentment. If you've answered that question somewhere, I have missed it, or my question somewhere. When do we introduce that? Can we do that anytime in the process, or should we wait till we work on column 4?
Well, all right. No, it's a wonderful question. All right. And it's subtle. It might seem subtle, but it's not subtle. In the intent in the big book, that prayer is introduced between column 3 and column 4, page 66 and 67. And it says, after you, at the bottom of page 65, it says, after you finish column 3, then it starts talking about the prayer practice. So it came to me in meditation, that question that you just asked, well, when do you introduce it legitimately? Well, in the big book, it says after the people complete step 3. But to my experience, now that I've had an experience with the freedom that that prayer produces, I introduce it right away. How soon do you want to be free? How soon do you want to be free? I mean, I would have no problem with introducing that on a standalone basis without any context at all. But introduced it correctly, it's not praying for other people. That's a wonderful spiritual practice, but that's not the practice described in pages 66 and 67. That practice is, I pray for me. I pray for spiritual intervention on me. I pray for the spirit of the universe, the divine surgeon, to come in with scalpel sharpened and remove the cancer from me. That prayer is specifically and only for me, for my healing. So how soon do you want to be free?
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay.
And then questions.
My second question is, how do I find a sponsor for codependency?
Probably by going to meetings of codependency.
And I've tried that, but I'd like to find somebody who's doing
try Al-Anon.
Somebody that's doing your program.
Well, try somebody who's done the 12-step work in Al-Anon.
Okay.
My workshop. There's over probably 40% of the people that come to my workshop have been or are in Al-Anon. And Al-Anon is a more mature program than Codependence Anonymous. I'm not saying better or worse. They're just more mature because it's been around longer. Now, the literature from codependency is probably better than the literature in Al-Anon for that particular issue. but you might find some seasoned person in Al-Anon that has done the steps out of the big book, and that won't be everybody, but and not necessarily through my methodology. There's lots of people approach the big book have never heard of Herb K, and they do a very fine job of unpacking the big book.
Okay, thank you. Because, I did go to an Al-Anon, and I asked the person if she would be my sponsor, or asked the person that kind of answers questions about sponsorship. And I said that I've been doing Codependent Anonymous, and so I'd like to find somebody who's familiar with that. And the answer was, no, we keep them separate. We keep Al-Anon and Coda separate. We don't really have anything to do with Coda.
I agree. That's a good answer. It's a primary purpose, and she gave you the official answer. That is correct. But there will be people in Al-Anon group that have even maybe some exposure to Coda and or Codependence Anonymous or their literature. But if in fact they've done the step work out of the big book and had a spiritual awakening, and they're in the Al-Anon environment, they probably will be able to help, even if they have very little exposure to Codependence Anonymous. But don't overlook the big book of Codependence Anonymous. I think it's Coda. It may be ACOA. I'd have to. It's a big orange book, and it's at least in my beginning approach to it, it's pretty substantial.
So I can just keep asking that question or wording it. I'd like to find somebody who's familiar with codependency to be a sponsor.
Well,
right.
What do you mean by codependency? The answer is yes, but what do you mean by codependency? And you may not want to use the word, but because it's got a lot of connotation. What do you mean by it?
What I mean, and they could ask me that question, right? What I mean is when I put my opinion, or when I put another person's opinion and needs above my own, consistently and persistently.
If you describe it that way and not use the codependent word, there's not an Al-Anon that's got any type of exposure and knowledge that wouldn't be able to help you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because that's the language. Codependency becomes a code word. And
a trigger.
Well, I wouldn't use that word. It's a code word that describes something that the Al-Anon may not be comfortable with. But if you describe it the way you did it with your definition, they'll be very comfortable with it. All right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, words are so important. Pay attention to your words and what you mean by them. And if you don't know, find out what it is you do mean by them. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for that too. Thank you.
Hi, Herb. Thanks so much. This is amazing. It just became acquainted with this step 3 and 4 methodology a few weeks ago, as you know, and been able to actually check in with a couple of guys on it, and they've found it very helpful. It's so profound. It is just, it's like blasting powder.
It is blasting powder. It's a really good term. Yeah.
Yeah. There was some wisdom teacher who said that it's a beautiful image that emotions wrap themselves around thoughts like iron filings around a magnet. And, it's the stories we tell ourselves.
Right.
And, I think of a couple, I read a little bit ago that like that victim story, the ego loves that because I'm immediately off the hook. I don't have to do anything more.
I get a free ride. That's the point. That's right.
Yeah. And so I want to maybe go back to the self-esteem and pride, but what was very powerful for me is not where I'm wrong. I mean, I came from a place where we thought, oh, here's where I screwed up. And it was very like automatic, like, okay, I did my penance. But the power in this is the responsibility, right? Not everything's my fault, but everything's my responsibility.
I say it again, please, because it's critical information.
Not everything is my fault, but everything is my responsibility.
Well,
And I,
everything to do with me. Yes.
well, yeah, I better qualify that, right? Because
Well, because
don't
part of
want
the disease of Al-Anon is that they actually think they make the sun rise and the moon set.
right, right. My little circle here, arms
Right.
wide.
Yeah.
And what I've been able to use for a couple of guys, and to me too, I love that analogy in Luskin where he talks about that beautiful beachfront property, right? And I can picture it in my mind. There's this $2 million house in Newport, beautiful, right? And what we do, and there's that beautiful patio on the Strand where, and we will make that story, we will give that story our most prime real estate. We will give it Front Street where it's everything we think and do about, when it should be maybe, relegated to a little shoebox in the broom closet, right?
Right.
And I have a friend who talks about, putting it in a box and dropping it in the ocean, like letting go, like
Right.
letting this go. So it was interesting and helpful how that distinction between the self-esteem and the pride. And I asked you, well, they're pretty similar. Like, and I love what you said. I want everyone to revere me. I want to be held in awe. But the terror is like, I'm not going to measure up. And it's interesting. I used to have a pattern when I would be criticized. My first reaction would be rage, just outrage. But then like in a couple of days, it's like, oh, they're right. I'm no good. So I had no center. It was all like, oh, they found out that I'm a fraud, that I'm just a hologram. So to the self-esteem and the pride, it almost sounds like the more integrated I am, the more similar and I guess humble that assessment will be. In other words, I'm comfortable having what I don't want people to see in me anything different than I see in myself. I don't have to have a story out there of what I'm not, if that makes sense.
Right. A couple comments just to expand a little bit on what you said, and that is the self-esteem and pride are flip sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
They're just different views. Heads is different than tails, but it's the same coin. Mm-hmm. Self-esteem is what I believe about myself. Pride is what I want others to believe about me. There should be some type of a correlation. So that's one thing. And the other is what you just said about the center of ourselves. Dr. Berger has, I think he coined it. He said, we place our center of gravity deep within ourselves. We do not place our center of gravity in circumstances, events, people, or places. We keep our center of gravity deep inside ourselves. And that keeps that he calls that emotional sobriety.
I love that. Yeah, he talks about the horse stance. Like if I have my feet underneath me, I can't be knocked backwards or I'm not.
Well, and it's about forward. Balance. That's right.
Yes.
It's about balance. Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right.
Thank you. This is great. Thanks.
Yeah. My question is around column 3 and the self-esteem, because I had this conversation with my sponsee on the weekend. She's in your 12-step Thursday night, and they're just starting on column 3s.
Right.
And so we were talking about the self-esteem, and I didn't go through the whole column 3 with her, just sort of looking at it with her, and just talked a bit about self-esteem. And so she didn't really get it. So I said, well, what is it that you really believe about yourself in your core, about who you are? And so she came up with that she was a good person, an honest person, and tried to do her best in all things. And I said, okay.
It's good. It's a good beginning. It's a bit timid, but I always allow it to just be what it is, because it's a great beginning.
Yeah, that was kind of my question, because, at the same time, she's talking about her resentments and feeling like a victim. So I know in column 4, her perceived role is going to be very different than, how she's perceiving her self-esteem at the beginning of column 3. So,
but that's how, in answer to the question that was asked earlier, that's how doing column 4 will amplify and give some color, some depth to the self-esteem. Doing column 4 will give it some depth, but they can't see it before they can see it. So I'm gentle, well, more or less gentle with people being somewhat timid until they feel comfortable enough with timid that they can kind of expand it a little bit to be outrageous.
okay. So I was just gonna leave it there and not probe any further and just leave it there.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't meet them where they are. Invite them to stretch, but many people they don't even know what you're talking about. Or they would be really uncomfortable because they feel like they're being unrealistic. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
And I haven't got column 3 in front of me, but I suspect on the right side is, what are you afraid of? If this is what you believe about yourself, then what is your fear? And I off the top of my head can't remember what she said in response to that about her fear about her self-esteem.
I think that's the value of that fear column answered throughout the system, because it's is that it opens the door to some suspicion beyond what we're able to see in the left-hand side. You may not see it yet, but it begins to open the door. And again, this is an organic process. You don't have to run in and open the door for them, because they can't process it. Let it just be organic.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. It's good to see you.
Hi, Herb. Hey, everybody. I'm new to the STEP Guide, and I'm also new to participating in your Tuesday classes. So I'm listening to everybody and really getting some really good things. And so I don't know if I necessarily have a question, but I just sort of decided that I would keep my hand up just in case I did. I am appreciating the information. It's really good. It's all coming together. Some things personally have come back to me from starting out, in working Tuesday nights and just being in my own study of doing the steps myself. And so I'll just share this. I'm in Al-Anon, and when I did my steps, because I did mine through Big Book, but when I did my steps, I ran into this issue lately. Now I need to do the steps somewhat solely on me, because I realized that I was still trying to control situations outside of myself. And it was necessarily like people, like when I do step 1, I say that I'm powerless over people, places, and things. And I really have this sense now, because I'm sitting within this powerlessness and really allowing that to soak in so that I'm able to move forward of things. Because I thought that I had sort of got past some of this stuff, and I realized that I haven't. So anyway, I love the concepts, again, that I'm reading in your books and that you've mentioned here about my lens, my perceptions, my belief. And those are some of the things that I'm bumping into with some things personally as I'm trying to move forward out into the work world. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And let me just say this as a perspective, and I hope it doesn't dampen your enthusiasm. It's just a perspective of reality. The people who are talking about being in a workshop and entering into the 4th column, we started the work in July of last year. The Tuesday program that you're in started the work in January. So they got 6 months on you. So if you're seeing and experiencing what you're experiencing now, you better buckle up with shoulder straps. All right, because you're going to have a profound radical experience by the time we get actually into that 4th column and start actually doing that work. So wonderful. I'm so glad that you're here and so active in terms of being on the Step Guide call. I think with your energy and your commitment and exposure, you're going to have a wonderful experience. Thanks so much.
I am one of the people that I'm working with, and we're on the third column, and I'm asking her to do all of her third column work before she does her fourth column work.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. In the third column, it's really hard for this person to stay with herself. She keeps going to taking the person she resents inventory.
Sure.
And when we got to what do you want to have happened?
Yes.
What she said is, I want him to suffer.
Okay.
Just to put the screw in and have him suffer. And I wasn't quite sure how to, I just said, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's legitimate, but it's not an answer to the question. The intent of that question is she has a resentment because of some action. What was her ambition or expectation or desire in terms of what was frustrated by his actual original response? So it's not what she wants now in terms of punishing him. It's what she has a resentment because she didn't get what she wanted. Well, what do you want?
She did that. I mean, they're divorced now and everything else, but she did define that. So, okay. So I just wasn't sure when she was focusing a lot on him and his inventory, how to get her back focused on what she wanted and what she needed and what was the impact on her, not on her children, not on her.
Yeah, the words that helped me are the verbs that are used in the big book. What was hurt, threatened, or interfered with? What was hurt, threatened, or interfered with in terms of her ambition at that time? What did she want at that time that she didn't get because of his opposite, whatever, action or reaction?
Okay.
Yeah. I try not to make people wrong. I just try to redirect their thinking. And you're doing it with trying to get her to, because it's very easy for her to take his inventory. But you could, in fact, remind her very confrontationally, well, we're not doing his inventory. That might be helpful to him, but right now you're doing your inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I mean, humans are humans, and this is what we do. That's right. We want to blame and or we want to punish. Yeah. Because we can't and we don't want to take responsibility. Because when I take responsibility, like the big book says, and we don't really hear what it says, but it's pretty confrontational. So our troubles are of our own making. And that's 100%. Our troubles today, I may have been victimized, but I'm not a victim today. I am not a victim today. I am victimizing myself today. And the lesson, it's a hard lesson, but it's a potential spiritual awakening lesson in the fourth column is I am responsible. And in fact, when you hear, and this may be premature, but I'm going to say it anyway, when you hear or you think, well, what's my part? That very question is a lie. I don't have a part. I do not have a part. I have 100% of my reaction, not a part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've heard me talk about it.
Well, I'm into the 10th chapter of Berger's book, and I love he starts out by saying, the problem is not the problem.
Yeah.
It's how I cope with the issue. The problem is just reality.
Yeah.
It's my coping. That's the
Oh,
part.
see, that's a different way of saying it. It's a wonderful way of saying it. I typically say it's not the event or the people, it's my reaction to the event or the people. And you're saying what he says, and that is it's not the circumstances or the event or the people, it's how I cope with reality is the problem, or how I'm not coping with it. No, actually, it's how I am coping with it, because it's probably dysfunctional.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, it's a hard lesson, because then we have to own it.
Yeah.
If we're going to get free, we have to own it. And then we can change it. If my problems are of Carlene's making, I'm screwed. Well, because Carlene's got to change in order for me to be happy. If my problems are of my making, there is a possibility I could change and solve my problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, these are the outcomes that we have experienced. And so it might be premature for some of the people who haven't, in fact, done this work completely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate this step guide meeting. I started participating at the end of last year, and I did your step study last year, and I am participating again this year. A lot of what I'm doing is just listening. I like to hear.
Yep.
I like to observe you working with the people. I sponsor a number of people, and this meeting is great too. People introduce topics and comments about what they, how they handle something or ask for your opinion, and it's just all good for me to listen. But I wanted to go back to that prayer for deep resentment.
Yes.
I had a couple of people that I was using that with last year, and for a period of time, and they all went away. Those issues were resolved and they have not come back. So I think they're gone.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But anyway, I've got that prayer. It's just with my reading prayers and meditation papers that I use every morning. And so I look at it and I go, oh, don't have to use that today. And you know what? That's one of those prayers when I initially start out, I said, I wouldn't have to say this if they hadn't have done that. And that, I got the part about it's my responsibility, because my prayer, I wrote the prayer so that I know that it's for myself. But after a while, when I, was just kind of turning that page over because it wasn't necessary for me to use right now, I decided to start praying for my spiritual health using the components of that prayer on a daily basis.
Nice.
And it's just been invaluable for me to do that. I'm an Al-Anon. I'm a real good little Al-Anon. I forgot about the part about, putting my own oxygen mask on before anybody else's. I'm going to take care of everybody else and hope that takes care of me. And I'll tell you what, it never did. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. Yeah. And I appreciate you and all you do and everybody else who shares. Thanks.
Well, and I'm going to highlight what you're saying because it's so important. See, what you said is you're showing up as a listener and you're watching this interaction both ways of people and the crosstalk that happens, and you learn from that. Sometimes you learn here, but all the time, if you're open, you'll be learning here, and you'll learn stuff that you'll process, and it'll organically come out of you, and you'll wonder where the hell that came from.
Yep.
No, it's wrong. We do pick up stuff by osmosis.
Yes, I believe that.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you said it that way. Yeah, please, people, just yes. I don't want to be redundant.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Herb. I just want to give a plug for the step guide groups. Mm-hmm. They're wonderful. And
what do you mean by, wait. What do you mean by that?
Well, I was just about ready to explain it.
Thank you.
So I retired for the third time, and I said that to you, and you challenged me to, before I jumped back and started working again, challenged me to take some time and to find my passion. And so, I didn't know what my passion was. So I thought I had to try some new things, step outside my box. And one of the things that I did was to put my name on the list to be a step guide. So I did. And so one person contacted me. Actually, two people contacted me. One dropped out. And so it was the two of us. And then it was the three of us. And then the four. And now we're up to about 6, sometimes 7 and 8. It just depends on their schedules. But it's a nice, solid group. And it's not that I'm the leader and I know all. There is so much learning and sharing and vulnerability and trust that's going on, because I was one of those people that thought I can do this on my own. I don't need a group.
Oh.
It is just nourishing and helping my program grow and grow. So that's what I mean by wonderful. I don't have all the answers. It's when I say I don't know that someone else chimes in and says, here's my experience.
Or you can bring it to this group.
Right.
And we've
Absolutely.
got 60 plus people that come to this group. There's bound to be somebody with an experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful.
My question, well, I came in late. And I'm reading in the chat, somebody posted something about victimization, and I'm thinking that's also about blame. And for me, when I worked the steps with my sponsor in Al-Anon, I felt, and I just wanted to share this and have your insight, empowered. I felt like, yes, all these things did happen. They are facts. And as one of my meditation teachers says, it's not happening to me now. Right. And I can realize that. And then when I worked the steps, it changed my entire relationship with my mother, particularly. And I think this is a spiritual practice. And where did I isolate or judge or wall off? And maybe it was fear. But then when I worked the steps, it's like I had more of a humanness.
Yes.
We're human, all of us. And I got to look at my own train wrecks. So I wasn't any longer, you did this to me, you did that to me. I got to own my own story. And then my mom, today is her 6-month anniversary of passing. But thank God I did the steps, because then the last couple of years of my mom's life, like, we got so close. And I feel that not only am I no longer a victim, I get to own back my own voice.
That's right. Empowered. You use the term empowered. It's a wonderful word, and it summarizes the promise of this process. We will be empowered. We come in, step 1, powerless and hopeless. We come out, step 9, with some hope and some power.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's the kind of gathering that I hope for. I pray for. It was wonderful. Pose the question to yourself and then spend some time in meditation about it. And you will be led, because it's 100% my experience. So here's a version of the St. Francis prayer. This is my most current version to make it more accessible and more relevant to us. Spirit of the universe, make me a channel of your peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, it is by dying that one awakens to life. The major transition here for me in this prayer is I eliminated the word eternal. I'm much more interested in having life here and now and today. So we're making the prayer conform to our intentions, which is actually the true nature of prayer. It reflects our intentions. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful month. I'll see probably many of you between now and then. And stay tuned for the emails and join us where you feel it would be helpful.